Have you ever felt that frustration? You know you're using this incredibly powerful AI, you ask it for something amazing, and what you get back is just meh. It's so common, but here's the thing. It's totally solvable. The secret isn't actually in the AI, it's in the ask. So let's dig in and figure out how to close that gap between what you say you want and what you really want to get.
So let's start with the core of it. What's actually going wrong here? Well, it usually boils down to how we're talking to these systems. We're often just way too vague, and honestly, we don't give the AI nearly enough to work with.
I love this quote from AI expert Chris Penn. It just nails the problem perfectly. Think about it. A large language model, that's your engine. It's got all the horsepower. But you can't drive an engine down the road, right? You need a car. Your prompt, that's you building the car around it. The chassis, the wheels, the steering. Without a well-built prompt, that powerful engine just sits there, revving its heart out, going absolutely nowhere.
And you can see the difference right here. It is night and day. On the left, you ask, tell me about AI in education. What you're going to get is a generic, probably boring, book report. But look at the right. You're telling it to be an expert. You're giving it a specific task, write a one-page article. You're giving it a goal, how to enhance student engagement. Suddenly, you've given it a role, a task, and context. The quality of the output isn't just a little better, it's in a whole different league.
So the big takeaway here is pretty clear, right? If you're not getting great results, it's probably not the AI's fault. These tools are incredibly smart. The real challenge, and honestly, the real opportunity, is right there between the keyboard and the chair. It's us. Prompting is a skill, but the good news is, it's a skill that anybody can learn.
So, how do we get better? A great place to start is with a simple framework called RACE. Think of this as the basic chassis for that AI engine we were talking about. It's a solid, simple structure that you can build almost any prompt on top of.
Okay, so first up, R is for role. You literally tell the AI who to be. Are you a marketing strategist, a sarcastic stand-up comedian, a professor of behavioral economics? When you assign a role, you're activating all the specific knowledge and, just as importantly, the tone of voice that goes with it. The response immediately becomes way more focused.
Next, A is for action. What exactly do you want the AI to do? And you gotta be explicit here. Use strong, clear verbs. Don't just say talk about. Say analyze, summarize, write a script for, or compare and contrast. This cuts through any ambiguity and gets you a much more direct and useful response.
C is for context. And you know, this might be the most important letter of them all. This is the why behind your request. Who is this for? What's the business goal? Are you writing for experts or for 5-year-olds? Giving it this background makes the output so much more tailored and relevant. It's a total game changer.
And finally, we have E, which is super flexible. It can stand for execute, where you specify the exact format you want, like a bulleted list, a JSON file, or a table. It could be for expectation, where you describe the outcome you're hoping for, like, give me 3 practical suggestions. Or, and this one is really powerful, it can be for examples. You can literally paste in a sample of the writing style or tone you want it to mimic.
Okay, so a framework like RACE is awesome. It gives us the art of prompting, a way to build a much better car. But what's happening under the hood, scientifically? Does every little tweak we make to our prompt have the same kind of effect? Because there isn't just an art to this, there's a real science too.
And that's exactly what a recent, really big experiment from the University of Michigan decided to find out. They dug deep into how different parts of a prompt actually influence an AI's behavior. And, well, the results were pretty mind-blowing.
What these researchers did was systematically test how tiny little changes in a prompt affected the AI's answer. They focused on 4 main variables. Did they add definitions for key terms? Did they change the output type? Did they ask the model to explain itself? And did they change how long the prompt was?
Now, here's the brilliant part. The researchers didn't just measure accuracy, was the answer right or wrong? They also measured something called compliance. And this is a huge, often totally overlooked factor. Compliance is simply, did the AI even follow your instructions? Did it give you the bulleted list you asked for, or did it just ignore you?
And this is where things get really, really interesting. Because the results, they were not at all what you might expect.
The science here reveals some seriously counterintuitive truths about how we're talking to these AIs.
It turns out compliance is absolutely not a given. Yeah, the super advanced models like GPT-4o, they're pretty good at following directions, but you can see here that a lot of other models really struggle. And look what happens. As the task gets more and more complex, compliance can just fall off a cliff.
So what does it even look like when a model is non-compliant? It's not always just a simple, no, I can't do that. The ways an AI can fail to follow your instructions are actually surprisingly varied.
You can kind of see the different flavors of failure right here. Sometimes the model just flat out refuses to answer. Other times, it generates what looks like complete arbitrary nonsense. And very often, it just fails to follow a really specific formatting rule, like providing a list of scores that don't add up correctly.
Okay, now for the big twist. It seems totally logical, right? If you ask an AI to explain its reasoning, that should make it more careful, more thoughtful, and therefore more accurate. But this is where the study uncovered a stunning paradox.
Just look at what happened with sentiment analysis. When they just asked GPT 3.5 to label a piece of content, it said about 20% of the content was neutral. But when they asked it to also explain its reasoning, that number shot up to 54%. Asking for an explanation didn't just add a little clarity, it fundamentally changed the AI's behavior, making it way more cautious and conservative in its answers.
And that right there is the prompting paradox. A simple, small, and what seems like a totally helpful instruction, a tweak you'd think would only improve the output, can actually warp the results in massive, completely unexpected ways. It really highlights that we're not just giving simple instructions, we are fiddling with the knobs of a very complex system with every single word we add.
So how in the world do we put all this together? How do we blend the art of a framework like RACE with the hard science of prompt design to really become power users?
It really comes down to a four-step process. First, always start with a framework like RACE to get your foundation right. Second, provide rich, almost overwhelming amounts of context. Give it more than you think it needs. Third, be painfully, ridiculously specific about the output you want. And fourth, this is the key, test those variables. Add that request for an explanation, then run it again without it. See what happens. Watch for those weird shifts, and then adjust your prompt.
And here's one last pro tip for you, again from Chris Penn. If you ever feel like your AI is just stuck in a rut, just churning out that predictable generic slop, try adding a completely random, unexpected word to your prompt. Something totally out of place like banana or Wonko rotary engine. This forces the model to try and make sense of this weird new word, and it can jolt it out of its rut and into a much more creative and original response. It's a weird trick, but it works.
So remember, your AI is an engine. It's got all the power in the world, but it needs you. It needs you to be the designer, the engineer, and the driver. By using smart frameworks and actually understanding the science of how your words affect it, you can build the exact car you need to get exactly where you want to go. So, the only question left is, what car are you going to build?